Hi, thanks for joining me today. This is Beverly at scrapandthread.blogspot.com. Today I wanted to show you from start to finish how to make a paper rosette flower or pinwheel flower, they're also called, using a Martha Stewart punch. This happens to be the punch around the page loops. Comes with a corner puncher as well, and I'm just using the edge puncher to make the rosettes. And here are a few examples. I started to make one because I needed an extra flower for a layout that I was making, and I had made some ribbon flowers, and I knew I wanted a paper flower to go with it, so I had inked up some paper after I'd punched it out and made this flower for my layout that I'm still working on. So these are good because they're fairly flat, so they'll work nicely on cards or scrapbook pages. And in this particular flower, I used the same punch to make the loops, and I made two strips. And one strip I did a rolled flower for the center part, and then the outside part is my pinwheel. For the inside part, I'm not going to show you how to make that today, but basically it's the same idea. You just take a strip of the paper and roll it up, and that's what I had adhered to the inside for the middle part instead of a metal embellishment. And I think that that'll look nice on my scrapbook page. And I made a couple of other ones here. This one has just a little jewel on it. This one has a ribbon slide with a piece of ribbon in it. And those will, you can use whatever you want. So what I normally do is I'll start with a piece of paper based on the size of the rosette that I want. So in this case, it's about 1 inch wide and 12 inches long. And if I'm going to stick tissue tape or stick another slim piece of paper on it, I don't do that part until after I've done the punching. And then I'll do that. Actually, I usually, depending on what it is I'm putting on there, if it's the foil tape, I do it after I've done the scoring as well. But if I'm going to use paper, I'll glue it down after I've punched and then do the scoring. So the first thing you do is you'll take whatever size paper you decide upon, and I found 12 inches long works pretty well for me. And then I'll start punching, and you just line it up. These punches are very simple to use. This happens to be a Martha Stewart punch. And I usually start not right at the end because I want to give myself something to hold on to do the end parts a little bit better, because they can kind of wibble wobble, and then they get a little bit out of joint if you don't have them completely lined up. But anyway, you just go along and you keep on punching it that way. And once you have your punched out paper, it looks like this all along it, and then you need to score it. So if I was going to glue this sheet of very thin piece of glue on here, I would do that at this point in time, or put tissue tape or whatever. But a lot of times I leave them blank. Sometimes, like the first one that you saw for my layout, I did ink up the ends. But you can do whatever you want. You can leave them blank. Pattern paper works really pretty for these as well. And then for this kind of punch, I want to make sure that I score it in between the loops. So I find the midway point, and that's where I'm going to score. It's not, in most of my rosettes, I do them 1/4 of an inch apart if there's not a specific punch that I've used. So on these, I do pay attention to that because I want to make sure that my score marks are going to be evenly spaced, so that when I do my accordion folding, that it will accordion fold evenly to make a really nice flower that will stand up and not be uneven. So I just find the halfway point in between those two loops, and I scooch my paper along rather than moving my hand up and down, because for doing it this way, because I am trying to find the halfway point rather than using the scoring board for the measurements. And it does have nice measurements here, and that's great for other things. But for this particular purpose, I just need to find the middle section. And then I fold it back and forth. This is also called fan folding. And I just will fold it back and forwards and squish it down to keep it kind of tight. And I'm going to do this real quick. Okay, so once you have that part all done, you're going to end up with something that looks like this. Now some people like to glue theirs with a Gluber or a double-sided adhesive, or they'll glue it down onto another piece of cardboard or whatnot. I use a glue gun because it works the best for me and it works fairly quickly. Before I do that though, I check to see if I have a funny end on mine where it's less than like a half of a fold, in which case if that happens, then I usually cut it off. And this one, it's just about a half, so I think I will go ahead and cut off that one little section, because it won't lay evenly if you have it sticking out a little bit further than what your fold was. And then also if you don't have it set up on the adhesive on the right part, then it won't glue down properly either, because you'll end up with just part of it gluing, and so then it'll come undone. So you just match that up at the ends. And the nice thing about this punch is because it does have that loop, you can really very easily match up that loop one on top of each other, and then you can't see the difference. If you're going to ink it, now would be a good time to do that, to put on some ink edges, because if you do it, or you can do it when you're all done, but if you do it beforehand, you'll end up with very pink or whatever color, you'll end up with inky fingers. So at that point then, you have your rosette, and then I tend to kind of squish it down a few times to make sure that I can sort of figure out how big I want it to be. The diameter of your rosette will be determined by how much you squish it together, and I tend to make mine with a fairly small hole in the center, because I like mine to be a little bit tighter so that it has a nice fan to it. So once I've determined that, make sure you put enough glue glob down to make your adhesive stay. There we go. And then I kind of manipulate it around a little bit to make sure that my rosette is fairly evenly spaced with the hills and the valleys, and then I hold it for just a little bit to make sure that it sticks down to where I want it to be. If I'm going to stick something with a point to it underneath, like the back of a button, I might stick it into my rosette at this point so it can be adhered with the hot glue. Otherwise, I use some kind of regular adhesive, whatever kind of glue I want, like liquid glass from Close to My Heart, or diamond glazed from Judykin, something like that. You can take a brad. This happens to be a corduroy brad, so it's quite big, and it has long tails on the back. You can clip these off with a wire cutter and just glue them down, or you could stick the brad blades back right into the glue, whatever you prefer. Buttons that are flat on the back, you can certainly adhere any way you want to as well. You don't have to be concerned about what kind of adhesive to use for that. I usually run some thread through mine, so not sure what I'm going to put on this rosette. Maybe the button, maybe another ribbon. A metal brad would look nice as well. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment or visit my blog at scrapandthread.blogspot.com. I do appreciate your time visiting with me today. Thanks so much.